everybody. This is the Lament Configuration Horror Podcast, home of the video Nasties. My name is Greg Knox, and I'm here with my regular co-host, someone who you definitely want to be stuck on an island with, Ria Fend.
Hi, Greg. Great introduction once again.
Thank you very much. I come up with it all myself. It's all my own work.
And of course, I'm here as ever to pick up the body count for today's show.
Indeed. Before we get started with the show, because one of the films we're going to be talking about on the show today is particularly nasty, it's only appropriate for Ria to give you a regular disclaimer that we play before every single one of these video nasty shows.
I shall take it away. Warning, the following broadcast may contain spoilers, extreme language, violence, and topics considered graphic or adult, not for those of a sensitive disposition.
Thank you very much for that. Now, before we move on our last show, we were talking about a film called Evil Speak. And what happened was we finished recording the show, and at the end, we suddenly realised that we hadn't actually discussed the most important bit of the whole show, which is whether Evil Speak is a video nasty or not. So, Ria, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, we're only human. Hey, let us off that this time. Yes, I would say no. It's not a video nasty. It really wasn't that controversial. I enjoyed it. What about you?
Yeah, I enjoyed the film. The film, when it was released originally, was very heavily cut, probably for the murders with the evil satanic pigs that we talked about in the last show, and also for the satanic influences of it, because obviously I suppose how they viewed it was they didn't want it to influence people to become Satanists. Evil satanic computers and all that. But yeah, based on sort of nowadays, looking through today's eyes, no, I don't believe it should have been a video nasty, and which is backed up by the fact that the film is available uncut from 88 Films, and you can buy it on either DVD or Blu-ray right now. So yeah, if you liked the sound of the film from the last show, by all means you can check it out there from those guys. They do very good work.
And I believe that the pigs are a strong selling point and not controversial, so there we go.
There we go. Although the woman being eaten in the shower by the pigs, that was another reason that the film was controversial at the time. Probably because she was naked, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I would imagine that's why they did it.
So, we just quickly had to do that just to sort of tie up loose ends for the last show. We're moving on to 3 new films that we're discussing on today's show. Now, these all, because when compiling all these shows, sometimes it's really easy to put shows together, and sometimes you have to try and think a little bit outside the box. But I was quite fortunate because on the show today, we have 3 films that are all set on an island, which is very, very useful. So the first one of which even gives it away in the name of the film itself is Island of Death, which is directed by Nico Mastorakis. Now, like a lot of video nasties, this has a number of alternative titles. So this is also known as Island of Perversion, very apt, A Craving for Lust, Devils in Mykonos, Children of the Devil, Cruel Destination, which sounds like a bit of a Final Destination rip-off. I guess. Not Cruel Destination. Killing Daylight, which it just sounds rubbish. And my personal favourite, makes no sense, Psychic Killer 2.
Well, the reason it makes no sense is because it was all set in Greece and written and directed by Greek people. So I think originally I've got here that it was Tapeado to Diavolo, which I'm not sure how that translates, but it's from the Greek, so that's why the titles won't make any sense, because they will have translated.
Yeah, exactly. So, when films are released in other countries, apart from, the original country, then yeah, really you could put any old title on there. Hence why, in the UK, one of the alternative titles is Psycho Killer 2. Oh no, Psychic Killer 2 even, God. It makes even less sense than Psycho Killer 2. This film, I'm just going to come out and say it, there's a lot of very, very perverted, kinky films that happen in this film. So, for those of a particularly sensitive nature, even though Ria's already given you our regular disclaimer, you may not want to listen to this, but we are only quoting what happens in the film, so don't blame us.
Yeah. It's pretty fucked up, but I'm going to recommend watching this film because I actually thought it was a good watch because it's so shocking.
So, for the uninitiated, what is the film Island of Death about?
Well, it's 1976, and as I say, it was set in Greece. I've got quite an affinity with this film because I used to live in Greece on an island for a while, so I enjoyed the setting. However, the content is something else. So the rough synopsis is a perverse couple who are maniac killers are on the loose on the Greek island of Mykonos.
Yeah, that is it to a T, basically.
But there's a lot more to it than that, and as we have discussed, we've made more notes on this film than probably any other film that we've covered so far because there's a lot of material here to talk about.
Yes, there's a lot that happens in the film, and yeah, how it starts.
Exploitation film at its greatest, really. Exploitation at its greatest, let's say.
Yes, and how it starts is it starts off in that way that a lot of films do, where it's set at a point and it's a character thinking back to the past and kind of how they got to the position that they're in now. So we see Christopher in a lime pit and he thinks back, so it's him and, well, now this is the thing, so we find out that, so the main characters in this film are Christopher and Celia, who at points say that they're cousins or they're husband and wife, but it turns out they're actually brother and sister, and they have sex in this film. So so you got incest, so you can tick that one off your particular taboo list that this film breaks straight away.
I also saw it coming that they chose Mykonos for a reason, so that they can exploit homosexuality, and they do, they slag it off and use it to their advantage in the film, and it's just so weird. But I knew that that's why they'd picked that island, so that they could play on that as well.
So it's quite interesting. As I said, Rias, you enjoyed the film, I take it, so that's correct.
Yeah, just because I wasn't expecting it to actually have any kind of notable points in it, and this film is fucking relentless. Christ, it does not give up. There is so much in this film, and it is so fucked up that I was genuinely surprised, and I'm actually going to say that if you're a horror fan, I'd recommend watching it because it's seriously fucked.
Yeah, I actually agree. So for the same reason, in that, I
feel guilty saying that I enjoyed it. I feel really bad, but I enjoyed this. It's so fucked up.
No, I enjoyed it for the same reason. It's really, really fucked up. I mean, the plot of the film, there isn't really a plot. It's a bunch of, these Christopher and Celia, this couple, they go on the island, they kill lots of people. They're on the island for some reason. Some cop is after them in England who somehow makes it to the island themselves. So the things they did in England. And then they go on this rampage, and that's basically it. There isn't really a lot of kind of other plot than that, but that's fine because what actually happens is so unbelievably perverse. A lot of it, there's a lot of firsts, as we will discuss, and At
first, it's like a nice holiday. It's I feel like sometimes when film locations like this are chosen and they're so pretty and picturesque, it's maybe they just wanted to make a film and have a holiday at the same time in a really, picturesque, beautiful location. It's just so creepy and unsettling how this beautiful location is so spoiled with all of this perverse, fucked up activity that goes on through the film. It's just so hard to see that in such a idyllic holiday location.
Yeah, I mean, on the version that I watched, there was a lot of travelogue-y type footage where it's just random scenes of the island and just the people there and things that are happening, which you do get in a lot of these films that are aimed at a Western audience. It's look, it's Greece, it's very exotic, you would like it here, it's hot all the time.
All the whitewashed walls and the beautiful all the plants and the flowers and sunshine and everything, and then it's contrasted with the grimmest content. It's just unbelievable.
Yes, and speaking of which, literally right at the start of the film, so we've got Christopher and Celia, they're in a phone box having sex, and Christopher has a great idea to call his mum, which actually turned out to be both their parents, well, both their mum. Yeah. He calls them and say, "Hi, guess what I'm doing now?"
Yeah.
As you do.
Yeah.
And then this is intercepted by Foster, who is the policeman, who for some reason is tapping his mum's phone. So he now knows where they are, which plays into the film later. Now, Rhea as death count girl, there's quite a few deaths in this film, and the first one is a randy Frenchman.
Unfucking believable how many deaths they have.
But
swearing
before that,
such
actually,
a lot, but I'm just still like in shock from watching this film. It's just unbelievable. So yeah, 11 deaths total, but wow, they are elaborate and grim.
Now,
I'm including the goat in this death.
Yes.
In this
is
list.
what I was going to say. So, on a previous show, when we talked about Mountain of the Cannibal God, we had man fucking a pig. In Isle of Death, we have man fucking a goat.
Yeah, so, not long after the phone box scene and after they're sort of mooching about having their kind of little holiday break, and you don't really know how grim it's going to get. Like, you think that's fucked up with the phone call, and you're like, oh, this is unsettling. And I believe she says, Celia, she says, good Lord, what a perversion, which in a very British accent.
As you do.
And they talk about coming from London, and it's all kind of hammed up like how British she is and how British they are and everything. And so they're getting away from it all over there. And so he gets wound up and shows kind of how he can be a bit tapped. Because he sees a woman having sex through a window, and he says that he would kill her if, like, she was cheating on him or something like that.
Yeah, I believe he says the exact words are, bitch, she's a bloody bitch is what she is.
Yeah, so he's getting quite wound up, and you're like, oh wow, okay, so he's already rang his mum and had sex down the phone. Now he's getting, like, quite wound up at something that, like, isn't related to him, and he's saying that he would do something extreme. Then he sort of tells this painter that who you think is his girlfriend or wife is his cousin. And you think, oh, that's a bit fucked up. And then there's this whole scene where they're in bed together, and he wakes up in the morning and he's like wanting to have sex, and she says, oh, I'm too tired, leave me alone. So he goes out on this hunt for just whatever to relieve his frustration, and he finds this cute little white goat. And anyway, boy does it scream. It's not you can really tell that it's kind of so staged, so it's not too bad, but obviously the connotation of him raping it is quite grim, and then he kills the goat. So there we have it. I know he's not a human being, but I'm going to put him on the death list because I loved that goat.
Did it bother you as much as the man fucking a pig? That's the big question everyone wants to know.
No, it didn't. It didn't bother me that much. I chuckled a little bit because it is, like, so obviously faked, and the blood's so fake, and he just kind of, he's holding it. He's obviously simulating having sex with it, but he's kind of holding it, and it's just, it's not really that big a deal. But obviously the premise of it is, like, grim, because you know by this point how unsettled he is, and yeah, goat rape. So there we go. So number 1, poor little goat. And you know that I like goats because we had that conversation about the witch, Black Phillip.
Yeah, exactly.
He was my homeboy.
Poor Black Phillip, he wouldn't appreciate being fucked by a man.
No, Black Phillip was my homeboy, so didn't appreciate this, So there we go. Number 1, goat. It's on my list.
And then we have our Randy Frenchman, who is number 2 on the list, who is quite interesting because Christopher, earlier in the film, he says, I don't like that man over there. He's a dirty bastard.
Does he really?
Yeah, he says that when they're having dinner.
Well, yeah, he sets that whole thing up in his weird, fucked up way, because he's like, so they like meet this guy who's like painting houses out there, and so he's the painter. And he leads this guy into believing that they're cousins, so he thinks that she's like fair game for chatting up. So he like walks him right into that, and he's like, yeah, okay, flirt with her. And then she goes off like and sees him, and this French guy like obviously tries to seduce her. She's an attractive woman. For some reason there aren't that many women around on there. It seems to be mostly men, so he makes a beeline for her. And they end up having sex outside on the grass, whilst who we now know is the brother, Christopher, he takes photographs, because he's got they had an extra room that they took when they took the property to rent it at first, and she says, oh, my husband will be using it to develop his photographs because that's what he likes to do. So you know that they're already going to do that, and he's took his professional camera. So he's sat on the rooftop while they're having sex, and he's photographing the whole thing. It's just so fucked up because at this point you still think that he's her husband when actually he's her brother. Oh God. All right. I'm not over this, but anyway. So number 2, the painter. So he comes down from the roof. He hammers some nails into his hand, into the floor, crucifies him in a traditional biblical style, and then takes the painty water, but as in white emulsion water that he's been painting the walls of the exterior of houses with, and he pours it down his throat, but not just a little bit, like a whole damn bucket of this painty emulsiony water, until the guy has probably drowned inside his lungs or from chemicals. And then blood comes out of his mouth and he dies. So it's all a jolly good time on this island.
Yes, and what I actually did like is with the scenes where you've got Christopher and Celia as well, sometimes as well, where they're taking pictures, where you've got that montage of images, one after the other really quickly. I actually quite like that effect.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's not bad actually with the way it's shot.
Yeah, I thought it was actually shot quite well. I think that's one of the reasons that even though the acting and the plot are a bit iffy, although they're not horrendous by any stretch of the imagination, but they're not what you would classify as a traditionally a good film. I actually think it's quite the shots are quite well composed, and I quite like the set pieces. And I thought the film looked nice. It did make good use of the location and the as you said, the chalk white sort of back houses and buildings and things like that. So yeah, I thought it was very well composed film.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and it's by no means boring. You don't have any opportunity to sort of...
Oh God, it certainly is not boring. Oh my God. It does not allow you to be bored. It is literally one scene after another of just total perversion, just with barely anything to connect them together, really.
Yeah, exactly. It's just onslaught of perverse activity. So, number 3, so they meet this gay couple, and there's this very sort of diva-ish, quite loud sort of camp man who they meet in the street, and he invites them to his engagement party. And she says, oh, who's the lucky girl, or who's the lucky female, or something, wife to be? And he goes, oh Lord, no, it's my boyfriend, it's my fiance. You're on Mykonos. So she's like, oh right, okay. So they decide that they're going to go to this celebration, and yeah, he ends up getting killed with a sword after he's been chased around the street by Christopher.
Yes, and that is after him and Celia watch them in bed together, and at one point one of the gay characters says to the other one, tell me where you want me to bite you.
Yeah,
which is obviously after that Christopher's he's not pleased, he's not very liberated in his views, let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think I've got a quote here. He says something about a homosexual that didn't deserve to live. It's oh my God. So homophobic, this film, just breaching so much controversy and...
Yeah, you most certainly wouldn't be allowed to get away with this today, let's put it that way. There's a lot of homophobia from Christopher mainly itself, so it's not one of the things that seems to happen with certain films is people accuse films of being one way or another when a character is that way. So the film itself is not homophobic, but the Christopher character is certainly very, very bigoted in many ways, and that's one of them. So...
yeah, and then...
he sees them as perverse just because they're gay, basically.
Yeah, there are a lot of references in this film to where Celia is sort of saying to Christopher, you're taking this more seriously than me, and I don't want to do these things, and you said there'd be no more victims, and she's kind of getting dragged along with it. But at this point, when they've watched that couple, the gay couple in bed, and then he's chased the larger man with the sword around the streets, he leaves her with the kind of young, sort of more vulnerable...
effeminate, shall we say.
Yeah, more effeminate, more vulnerable fiance in the bedroom, and she's sort of reverting from being just as perverse as Christopher and getting into it and kind of playing like a partner to him in terms of being just equally as fucked up, and like they're like a tag team. But she's then
tag team of perverts.
Tag team of psycho fucking perverts rampaging around Mykonos. But then she's kind of playing the innocent female as well, and she's like coaxing the young fiance out of his kind of fear, because he's like paralyzed with fear on the bed and he doesn't know what to do. Then she just takes a gun out and she like makes him put it in his mouth and suck it, and then she just blows his brains out. And then part that really got me was that they quite quickly and cleverly cut to them eating like some breakfast, and it was like, so, you know, like when you get like a cherry compote or like,
yes,
almost like jam, and it's like really red and bloody and lumpy, like reduced cherries, cooked cherries. It was like that they're eating with a spoon just right after she shot his brains out the back of his head into the wall, and it's like, whoa, pretty cool, but so fucked up at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I would say that scene, even by itself, ignoring what's happened before and what indeed happens afterwards, is going to be, because basically you've got a guy filleting a gun barrel. Now that in itself, anything to do with guns or even sex acts like that, the BBFC have a massive problem with. So yeah, I can quite easily see why this was prosecuted. It's quite interesting you mentioned Celia and her motivation, because although Christopher, his motivation was very consistent throughout the film, she was a little bit more wishy-washy, whereas like you said, and I agree with this, like at points she seems to be very hesitant, very reluctant to do the things that Christopher is doing and doesn't really want to get involved, whereas other times she just seems to be very, very into it, like this scene that we discussed just now. So it was just very inconsistent in her character's motivation, and that was one of the only real issues that I had with the film.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, wouldn't say I had an issue with it, but yeah, that did sort of spring to mind. And a couple of other things was like, she was sort of being pretty sarcastic when I think one of the victims like faints, and she goes, "Oh, poor thing, he fainted." Like, she really doesn't give a shit, but she's just saying it anyway, and it's quite sort of like, oh, it's like, makes you feel very uneasy, because it's like, she is pretty fucked up, but then she's playing on like not being and kind of blaming it on him, which she does all the way through the film. The part that really got to me was, because they took lots of photographs, I think it was maybe of that couple, like the larger man and the fiance. I think it was them, but then they get the photos developed, because obviously this was back in 76. So they get the photos developed like properly in the dark room, and he puts them on the bed one morning, because it keeps cutting back to them in their room, kind of in between killings, like just having their holiday time. And he starts to masturbate to the photos, and then she joins in, and like that really got to me. It was like, wow, how fucked up are you? And she was like reluctant at first, but then she joined in, and I was like, yeah, you're definitely as fucked up as he is.
And then at that point we get the amazing song Destination Understanding, which blurts out over the soundtrack, which is amazing. It's very, very cheesy, sort of. I don't know if it's supposed to be really Greek sounding, if it's even got anything to do with the film whatsoever, if it was written for the film, but it's absolutely amazing. Let's just put it that way. In fact, I actually quite like a lot of the music in this film.
Yeah, me too. There was one at the beginning that was really cheesy and funny as well, but then Destination Understanding really does take the prize, I think.
And then we have the death of Foster, who manages to locate the couple on the island somehow. And he's killed in a very imaginative way, I thought.
Yeah, so death number 5 is Foster. So they tie him to a plane. He's absolutely terrified, as you would be if you were tied to one of those very small kind of planes with 2 seats in. And they fly him up, and he's kind of hanging on, but he's like loosely tied with this rope. And then eventually he sort of comes dislodged and the rope's tied around his neck anyway. So then he's hanging off the plane, and he's hung by the rope. And then they kind of look out the window and they're like, "Oh, do you think he's dead?" And they're like, yep, think he's dead. Okay, cut him down. So they cut him loose, and he falls into the sea, and he's dead.
Now, I wanted to see him hanging from the plane. I think that would have made an amazing visual. You could have done that quite easily with a dummy, and if shot far away, it will look convincing enough. But no, it didn't do that.
Oh, the version that I watched, they had a small bit where he's kind of hanging, and then they cut him down. So.
And then we have another scene, which is absolutely amazing and hilarious in many ways. So there is a cougar-type character who's called Patricia. Now, very interestingly, because I know you're a huge fan of Trauma, the actress who plays Patricia...
Trauma.
Yes, the actress who plays Patricia, her name's Jessica Dublin. She actually appears in A Toxic Avenger Part 2 and Part 3.
Yeah, oh cool, awesome. I didn't know that, but that's an interesting fact. We missed an amazing quote from Foster when he gets cut into the ocean. That Christopher says, "I hope he's got a waterproof watch," which I found hilarious.
So cheesy.
Yeah. So Patricia, she's in 2 Trauma films.
Yes, so she's in there. So Toxic Avenger Part 2 and Part 3. And
does she play a cougar in those as well?
She looks pretty cougarish in this, and those films are obviously after Island of Tef. So, God. The most amazing thing happens in this scene. So Christopher goes to see Patricia, and he's not really going to fuck her, although she really wants him to. And so what he does instead is he gives her a golden shower.
Yeah, and at first she's really shocked, and she's like, "Oh, what are you doing?" Whoa. And then she must just think, well, this is what he likes doing. So she gets really into it, and she's like, "Oh, yeah." And she starts she's I think this is before he does the golden shower. She starts licking her lips at him in this really seductive over the top way. But it's so cringy. It's just so cringy. And she's in this, one of those kind of cheap, nasty pink baby dolls, lay on the bed, "Come and get me." And then he just pisses on her. So she's not expecting that. I don't think she's too pleased at first. And then she gets into it. So it's all a bit weird and fucked up, as is the whole film. And then...
No one expects a golden shower.
So then he just beats her to death and, bangs her head against the floor. It's so damn brutal.
Yeah, similar to a death in The Cannibal Man, so except on the floor instead of a wall.
Yeah, brutal. It's just crazy. And then he decides to run over her with a bulldozer just to finish her off.
Well, not just that. Not only does he run her over, he literally decapitates her using the bulldozer itself. So he lowers the arm of the bulldozer right sort of just below her head and just decapitates her, which I thought was pretty fucking awesome, to be honest.
It's brutal as fuck. And then, this film is moving pretty fast. We've got so much going on here. So, Death 7 and 8 together is 2 hippie rapists who they meet in the village. And I think one of them is suggestively eating a phallic-looking cucumber whilst he's walking along.
Oh, Jesus.
What the hell? Just taking his cucumber out as a snack there, a whole damn cucumber that he's gonna suggestively put into his mouth. And then they rape the wife. They're trying to rape the wife.
They try to. They basically go into their flat. She's having a bath, so she's naked. The actress who plays here does get naked at least 5 different times in this film.
Especially at the end.
So don't really mind.
Especially at the end, she gets naked a whole lot.
Yes, she really does get naked a lot, which isn't a bad thing necessarily. And they are trying to rape her, but then Christopher turns up and kills both of them, one of whom is drowned in a toilet. So that's a pretty... what a way to go. So, drowned in a toilet.
And then we presume the other one is beaten to death or something.
We'll just say he's beaten to death.
Yeah, I couldn't really make that out. And so that's Death 7 and 8. They deserve to die, in my opinion. Fucking hippie rapists. thoroughly unpleasant guys, so I was quite glad to see the back of them. Then there's another kind of lesbian love scene. I think it's like Celia's like the lure again, and then Christopher comes in, and she's like a heroin addict, like the woman, and then he like injects her with more heroin, like way too much, and then he also gets a bottle of booze, and she's like lay on the floor, and he pours it down her throat in the same kind of way they did with like the painty water bucket, and he's just literally just pouring so much into her mouth, and then she's kind of laying there sort of conscious but choking, I think, and he decides to go over her face with a blowtorch to finish her off. So again, all fun and games.
Yeah, exactly. So not only have you sort of forced her to have an overdose, you've then sort of made her sort of drink this whole bottle of wine or alcohol, whatever it was, and then you've just not, that's not enough, you've gone and burnt her to death as well. And now the burning effects I don't think were that effective. However, I did like the way that anyone who's been a bit naughty and taken like a deodorant can and sort of held like sort of a lighter in front of it and then sprayed through the light, that looks really awesome, and that's basically what they did here. So
yeah. Plus, in her state that she was in on the floor, it was very fitting with it to be quite blurred, like how it was filmed. Just sort of added to the effect of it all. So I like that as well.
And then moving swiftly on, because so much happens in this film, as you said. So Christopher has prevented Celia being raped, but then he tries to rape, I believe it's the woman whose house they're staying in, I believe.
Yeah.
Or it's someone who works in the house, or it's a local anyway, it doesn't really matter who it is. So he tries to rape her, but she manages to run away.
Yeah. That's the one that he's chasing, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So he's chasing her away. She goes into a room in the house, and she thinks that she's gotten away from Christopher, but in fact, dun dun dun, she has not.
He's got a fucking scythe. I don't know where that came from, but
it was in the garden.
Oh, it's a pretty awesome weapon and pretty awesome kill, and he's brandishing this scythe, which is very menacing, and then he like puts it through the door and it goes through her back, so that's pretty cool. Not a bad effects there as well.
Yeah, it's a really cool effect, I would say.
Yeah, and so in total there are 11 deaths, but we'll get to that shortly.
Yes, so after this, the police turn up. And then Christopher and Celia have to run away. So they just try and run away into the countryside, and they get away, and they think they're safe. So they turn up at sort of the home of a shepherd. And the shepherd, who is a bit simple, just basically lets them stay in his barn with hay, which again, and they're kind of, Celia in particular is dressed in white. So I think there's a lot of religious imagery used in this film. And I think, again, like that, I found quite interesting that she's basically wearing all white.
Yeah, very controversial, and is as well like in Greece. It's a very Catholic place, so yeah, I can see like why this was banned. Let's say.
So at this point, as you do, the shepherd rapes Celia, or at least he starts to, and then Christopher, instead of stopping it, just starts taking pictures again.
Yeah, so fucked up. And she's like, what? Help me. And he's like, no, I'm just going to take photos, actually.
Yeah, as you do. And so she gets upset. And because she's got upset, the shepherd then basically stops what he's doing and then decides to rape Christopher instead.
Yeah, and at this point I was thinking, right, okay, he deserves that. So he goes over and like rapes him. And she sort of like calms down a bit and she's like, oh, right, okay. Carry on sort of thing, because he tried to, he was going to just watch her in that position. So then the tables were turned.
And it's quite interesting because earlier in the film, I think the reason that Christopher in particular is killing all these people, because it's like, well, these people are perverted, these people deserve to die. Whereas the shepherd, he actually refers to, well, these are the innocent people, so they're the ones who deserve to live on this island. And it's like, well, yeah, he's kind of got his comeuppance there, so to speak, because the shepherd picks him up, dumps him in this lime pit, and also before he does that, actually farts on him, which I thought was...
Oh my god. And then he says to Celia, like, oh, he likes you. Come on, help me out, help me get out. I'm all right. I've not been burnt. I'm in the lime pit, but there's no water in here, so I'm okay. And she just says to him, well, God doesn't help perverts. So that's, harking back to the religious theme with all of the white and the things that she's wearing at the end. And she actually seems quite content with this rapey shepherd who has then started to sort of help her out, and they're in a relationship. And this is when you find out that they're brother and sister at this point, and it's like, oh my God, like, it's really sort of such a great part of the film where you're like, this is just so fucked up. The realization that they're actually brother and sister.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, that in and itself, even ignoring all the other fucked up shit that happens in the film, that just by itself is messed up enough. That it's like this, brother and sister. Like, it does kind of make you wonder. And it's a bit of a shame in a way, although I do kind of understand why they did this, where you don't actually know anything about them before they got to the island at all. It's like they have no backstory.
Yeah, but I think that's what makes it interesting, because it really does build so well. It's like it just gets more and more fucked up as the film goes on, and you're thinking, when is this going to stop? It's just so much to take in. And like you say, there's just some awesome music going on. It's just awesomely bad, let's say. It's like, I think the beginning of the film, there's this film that's like, do you love me like I love you? Something very, very cheesy. And I looked it up, and the director of this film wrote all of the lyrics for the songs. And I thought that song was good until Destination Understanding came on. And there's like lyrics in it that are just basically like, get the sword, kill them all, get the sword, kill them all. And that's essentially what he's doing at some point. He's brandishing this sword and running around Mykonos just wanting to kill everybody. So it's all very apt and fitting, and such, so complex and deep and meaningful with the lyrics.
And what I also found kind of interesting is comparing it to a previous film that we've reviewed. So Toolbox Murders, one of the issues I had with that film is the killer in the Toolbox Murders, he has like religious views, and it's very, very conservative. Now, the difference between this is, yes, this is another character that kills people that has very religious views, but the film in this case is basically telling you that they're wrong, and he is a massive hypocrite, whereas in the Toolbox Murders it didn't. So that's why it bothered me in that case sense, but it didn't bother me this time.
Yeah, it's so fucked up. Can't go over this film.
This is going to be a very interesting question then, seeing as how we've got to the end of the film now. Given everything that happens in the film, are we to say that this is in fact a video nasty?
Hell yes from me, but by all means watch this, because what a spectacle, and it is fucked up. And we haven't actually mentioned at the end, it's so satisfying that he's in the lime pit and it starts to rain and he's gonna die and he kind of deserves it, and she's just gonna live...
Kind of?
Yeah, he really fucking deserves it. And she's just gonna live with this simple rapey shepherd and let her brother die, and he dies, and he's the 11th death, so there we go. Satisfying, but fucked up. So I recommend this film. And yes, I mean, incest, come on, and all the other shit that happens, totally, it should have been banned.
Yeah, clearly they didn't have visas in Greece in those days, so I'm pretty sure it's not as easy as that. Yeah, I'll just stay here now. In terms of whether it's a video nasty or not, I mean, I'm not going to be offended by something like this, but yeah, given gun fellatio, incest, golden showers, one thing after another, totally see why this was a video nasty. Although, having said that, the film is available uncut from Arrow. Yes, the fine people at Arrow again. This is available on a DVD Blu-ray combo pack, which I actually do want to get, because I actually did enjoy this film quite a lot. So I will be playing that at some point in the future, and who knows, you should probably do that as well, because we both really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I think everybody should watch this, like, if you're really into horror, and just please tweet us your review or any parts that you picked out that you equally enjoyed. Just let us know what you think. I don't know anybody else that's watched this besides me and you, so
Oh, there you go. So it's one definitely to be sought out and watched for sure.
It gets 5.1 on IMDb, so obviously some people didn't enjoy it as much as we did.
No. IMDb, as we've established, is not exactly the most reliable source of scores for films. Driller Killer 5.0, that's totally fucking wrong, I'm sorry. But yeah, again, although thinking about it, like, the version I saw was completely uncut, had all the material in it. If you're seeing a film and it's got bits taken out of it, it completely kills like the coherence, completely kills the pacing. You've got all the good bits basically taken out. So yeah, maybe people saw it in that version, maybe it was lesser quality. The music is pretty cheesy, a lot of it anyway. So I don't know, who knows? Or maybe they're just boring. What can I say?
Are we going to play the listeners a sample at the end? Because I think we should.
Well, you have to wait and see. Wait till the end of the show. So keep listening, everyone. We move on to our second film of the show, which is also set on an island. And this is called The Slayer, although it has the alternative title of Nightmare Island, which actually is a pretty apt title for the film. And this is directed by J.S. Cardone, who hasn't directed anything of note unless you count the sequel to Joel Schumacher's 8mm, 8mm 2 as a noteworthy film, although he has written the remake of Prom Night and The Stepfather. So, although he didn't direct those films, so he did have a very significant hand in both of those, and both those films are fucking awful from what I understand, so yeah. If I was to tell you, Ria, that you've got a film and it's about a killer who has long nails, who kills people in their dreams when people are asleep, what film would you say I was talking about?
I would probably say Nightmare on Elm Street.
Wow. Now, interestingly, this film was actually released before Nightmare on Elm Street.
Okay. But we cannot really compare it because this film is shit.
Well.
And Nightmare on Elm Street is not shit.
No, indeed. And, what actually happens in The Slayer?
Well, I had high hopes for this film because of the title, because, you know, the band Slayer sounds pretty metal, sounds like there's going to be lots of cool killings. 1982, I'm like, yeah, this could be a good film. So the basic synopsis is that siblings, Eric and Kay, and Kay's doctor husband David, and the sister-in-law Brooke, along with a pilot called Marsh, they get stranded on an island where there's a face-off against a supernatural beast which is drawn to Kay, who dreams of it killing her.
Now, when you tell me that synopsis, on paper, that film actually sounds quite awesome.
Yeah.
Which is, hey, as we said, Nightmare on Elm Street. It's about someone who kills you when you're asleep in your dreams. And they're on an island, and it's like, that sounds pretty awesome. I quite like the sound of this.
Yeah, the title sounds good. I saw some posters for this before I watched it. I'm like, the artwork looks pretty cool. You know, there's lots of flames going on here. It looks awesome. Watch the film. It's like, whoa, okay, this is slow.
Yeah, so unfortunately, the reality of the film itself does not match the actual concept. When they talk about remakes, the best sort of films to remake are really films with good ideas where the execution was lacking. And I actually think you could probably remake this film and do a really good job. So someone should probably remake this.
Yeah.
I mean, fuck it, I'll do it if no one else wants to do it.
Yeah, you should. Like, the title in itself is pretty awesome, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like Slayer too, so yeah, absolutely, The Slayer, it sounds pretty awesome. However, as you've kind of already covered, the film is really boring.
Dull as dishwater, as I put it.
And it's also really dark, which is actually the same problem that The Dawn That Dripped Blood had, in that we've got, basically, you can really not, it's hard to tell what's going on for a lot of the scenes because they're so dark.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, there was a couple of points that jumped out at me, like there's a scene where there's like a head in the bed or something, like decapitated.
Yeah, so that happens after the second murder of the film, Kay wakes up and you've got the head of her husband next to her, but oh no, wait, it was just a dream.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that. It feels like false start, so it's kind of disappointing. Regardless, the body count is 5 apparently in this film, but I really struggled to grasp where the deaths were, what they were like. It was so dark. There was one scene that jumped out at me that was pretty cool and a little bit scary, but most of it was quite wishy-washy and difficult to see, I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, what I will say is I didn't enjoy the film, as we've established, and neither did you. I thought the acting was okay. I didn't think it was amazing or anything, but I thought the acting was all right. I thought the directing was okay. Like, it was not outstanding or anything, but and I thought the couple of the deaths were quite cool. Like the pitchfork death, that was pretty well done, I thought. It's just the pacing of the film. The pacing of the film was just so sedate, and
yeah, nothing was happening for such a long time. It was so slow. It was just like, what? Like, just doesn't have to all be her kind of moping about, like not knowing what to do with herself. Can you not just put a bit of substance in there?
So the plot of this film can be summed up really very, very succinctly. So you've got two couples. They end up on the island. Fisherman dies. The husband dies, David. They can't find him because he's not there, so they look for him for a while, and those scenes were actually all right. I quite like the atmosphere that those scenes generated. Particularly, there was this old abandoned theatre on the island, which is quite interesting, and I liked the way that looked. And they find his body.
Yeah, that was definitely the coolest part. Like, I liked that bit. I thought that was really eerie and creepy.
Yes, and that's, as I said, they find his body, and then Kay's telling them, look, it's this thing that kills people in their dreams. I see them die in the dreams, and then it happens in real life. And obviously, as they always do in these kind of films, they don't believe her. And then Eric dies. He dies in a bit of a shit way, if I'm being honest.
So he gets a fish hook put in his mouth, and he gets dragged around.
Yeah, which doesn't look all that great, and because it's so dark, you can't really tell what's going on.
Yeah. So definitely the best part was David hanging from the ceiling, and her scream is really like shrill and like goes on for ages, and that's pretty cool, that part.
Yeah, and then you have Brooke, who is the sister-in-law, as you said. She gets killed, and what I thought was the best death in the film, with the pitchfork. It's a pretty different way of dying, and I thought the effects looked really good on that one. And then, you've just, at that point, you only have Kay, the main character, left. Although she isn't actually really in the film that much. There's long stretches of the film where she's not there, and it's just other characters talking, which is probably one of the reasons why this film feels so slow. Because a lot of the time, she isn't really the focus.
Yeah. It's just really disjointed, isn't it? And doesn't really flow that well. No. So the first death, as I mentioned, is a fisherman who is scalped with a baseball bat, which is quite interesting. So I didn't think you could get scalped with a baseball bat, but hey, apparently did, and it goes flying into a bucket. Okay, all right.
Which is quite cool. And then you get David's death, which you liked.
Yeah, I like that. He's stuck in the ceiling, and then when she finds him, he's kind of hanging from the ceiling. He kind of like drops out of there, and it's quite dramatic, and she screams really loud. So.
And the deaths are quite protracted as well, which in films like this, where you've got like a slashery type film, I mean, this is kind of a slasher film as well, although the difference between this one and previous slasher films that we've talked about on the show is that it's not a person doing it, it's like a supernatural being that you don't see until the very end of the film. So in that regard, it's like they had to be a little bit more imaginative with like how people die, because they're just killed by what looks like nothing.
Yeah, true. So Fisherman, David, Eric with the fish hook,
and then Brooke
with the pitchfork.
And her death is kind of that sort of stereotypical sort of slasher death where they're bumbling around in the dark. There's a lot of bumbling around in the dark looking for things in this, which again is not good for pacing.
So funny. Imagine if it wasn't called The Slayer and it was called Bumbling Around in the Dark.
Well, interestingly, there's a giallo called The Police Are Blundering in the Dark. So someone has actually already taken that as an idea for a title. But yeah, lots of blundering in the dark in this film. And then, yes, she, in that stereotypical way of these kind of films, and I love pointing this out because it always happens, that people falling over, people being unable to open doors as soon as they're under any kind of duress whatsoever. And yep, she gets killed with a pitchfork, which I thought looked pretty good, as I said. And then you've got like Kay, the main character. She's just in the house by herself for ages. She doesn't have anyone to talk to, and it's kind of like, well, how's this going to work? Because like she's seen all these other people die, and then admittedly she does have a vision right at the start of the film. There are a lot of dreams in this film. So she has a dream right at the start of the film where she sees something attacking her, and it's got really long nails. But yeah. She's just sort of waiting around in the house for something to happen, and then Marsh tries to get in the house for some reason. I'm not sure why, because he doesn't appear for the rest of the film until right at the very end, and then he gets killed with a flare gun.
Yeah, and then there's like a lot of bumbling around in the darkness, and then at some point you do see the Slayer, and it was pretty cool, but very short. From what I remember, there's just a short flash of him, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, they do kind of save that right to the end, and you do only see it for like a couple of seconds. I think if they'd done it for any longer, it would have looked ridiculous.
Yeah, it would have looked so fake, so that quick flash is like enough, and it's kind of cool, you know, it's not amazing, it's not right.
And, well, as we've mentioned in the film, this is a pretty massive spoiler, but we don't recommend this film, so I don't really care in this case. This film is all a dream.
Yeah, which is so disappointing at the end, and then it goes back to, like, they're like kids again, and I was just like, I'm so fucking confused and disappointed, like, just woke up and it's all a dream, and it's Christmas Day, and everything's happy, and it's just like, fuck off.
Yeah, I mean, it does make sense if you watch the film. However, the film is so uninteresting that like I and you found it quite hard to pay attention to.
Yeah,
to kind of put it into,
I've got zero enthusiasm for this film. Like, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. I don't really blame you. And now, I mean, to compare it to, so Island of Death, I wrote about 3 pages of notes for it. The Slayer, I managed just about 1.
Yeah.
So it kind of shows you like how interesting this film was to write about or talk about.
Yeah, I've got 5 for Island of Death and 1 page of notes for the Slayer. So there we go.
I mean, I've heard some people say that like this is actually a good film, and I can kind of see why you would say that, because as I mentioned earlier, like the acting is okay, the dialogue is all right, if very expositionary heavy in a lot of places. The effects are okay. The directing is okay, but it's just not been written very well. It's just there's no kind of there's no tension. So when things happen, there's no urgency. It's just really feels really, really long and drawn out, even though it's not.
Yeah, it's very true. It's just not structured that well.
No. So, well, in terms of should it be a video nasty, I'm going to give it a very easy no. I'm not even sure why this was on the list in the first place, because there's nothing really controversial that happens in it, unless they really, really didn't like Slayer and they just thought the Slayer. Maybe it's the same thing. They're also it's going to be about, you know, Nazis, like Angel of Death. So I don't know. Maybe the BBFC got confused. Possibly. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I think they didn't watch it, and the premise sounded much more threatening or awesome, however you want to view it, than it actually is. And they're like, it's banned. And that was that. And yeah, I'm going to say no. I don't think it should have been banned, because there's nothing even mildly offensive about this film.
No. However, if our amazing review has not convinced you to not watch the film already, and you do want to view it and you're in the UK, you can in fact buy this right now from Cornerstone Media. Those people again. I believe they also released The Dormant Drip Blood, so crap slasher films are obviously their market that they're trying to conquer at the moment. So yeah, that's how you view it if you want to watch that film, but really not very interesting. Probably one to avoid.
Well, not as bad as the one we're about to discuss, because I think I preferred this one of the next one that we're going to talk about.
Yes. So we come to our last film set on an island for today, and this film is called The Ghastly Ones, otherwise known as Blood Rites, which I believe some in America, maybe some other places, more commonly known as that, or indeed Blood Orgy, which makes it sound more exciting than it actually is. This is directed by Andy Milligan, who is, from what I understand, a perpetrator of films that are very, very, very low budget, very incoherent. If this is anything to go by, I will definitely not be watching any of his other films. So, Ria, what the almighty fuck happens in The Ghastly Ones? Because how did you interpret this film?
A pile of shit. I mean, no. 1968 this film was made, and it's very shoddily put together and shot. So you can tell that it's back in the 60s, but it's by no means as good quality of some of the previous 60s films that we've talked about. So the brief synopsis: 3 married couples are forced to spend the night in a Victorian-era house where they start getting killed off by a deranged psycho who's hell-bent on claiming an inheritance that they are all entitled to and that they all want.
Now, that is the synopsis of the film. However, it took a few goes for us to kind of actually work out what the fuck is actually supposed to be happening in this film. And now, the reason for that, there are what are called good bad films, so like Blood Feast, for example, which was actually released 5 years earlier than this and is actually more professionally made than this film. So we're talking Herschel Gordon Lewis here, low budget, sort of, even the acting is better in Blood Feast than it is in this film.
Yeah.
Although I would say, so to get my point across, so you have like films that are funny, like Cannibal Terror was funny when we talked about it. Let's face it was a shit film, but it was absolutely hilarious to talk about. This film is not even really funny.
No.
It's just fucking shit.
It's just so terrible. And like, looking back at my notes, I tried to find some positives in this film. I really struggled.
Oh, wow.
I've put, like, because of the Victorian era house, and even though it's shot in the 60s, they've kind of placed the plot a much earlier time, so it is quite Victorian. And I've put that there's like nice vintage styling and clothing, and that there's quite a good sort of visual effect with the styling. But like I say, the footage is really shoddy. I've put dramatic old school music, which I think when it first started I was quite hopeful of, paired with the Victorian-esque sort of clothing and styling. And then I've just put naff. Because I was just like so bored. It just really drags on and there's not a lot that sort of stands out. So I tried to pull out some positives, but it's very difficult to find anything that I like about this film.
I even think you're being generous with the costuming, if I'm being honest, because the reason I say that is because at the start of the film, it's like, okay, is this set in period? But then when they're like in their underwear, all the underwear is modern for that time. So it's like, I have no idea what's actually going on here. When is this supposed to be set? Because there's no kind of indication as to what period this is supposed to be.
Yeah, and then it's like, is the footage just shit, or is this some kind of effect to make it look like a shot in
I'm
period?
sure it is literally just shit.
Oh god, yeah, just so bad. I was trying to be optimistic there, but the rest of the film, I mean, with your help, we have picked up the death count here, and it's 8, which sounds dramatic and eventful, but there's really not much going on, so...
No, so our first 2 deaths take place in the first 5 minutes of the film. Now, the first 5 minutes of the film, have no relevance to the rest of the film whatsoever. Literally, you've got a couple, they appear to be in a forest or some kind of woody area. They get killed by a man with a knife. And then this is never brought up for the rest of the film.
Yeah, I think he's stabbed in the eyeball. It sounds eventful, but it's really not.
No, and the way that the killings are shot are completely ridiculous, so you can't actually even work out what's going on. I had difficulty even working out, like, well, hang on, has he got a knife? Because the director has decided to use, like, a swirly cam effect, so people who complain about, I don't know, found footage films, so like Blair Witch or films like that, being like, oh, shaky cam, shaky cam, shaky cam. Honestly, they have nothing on this. Nothing whatsoever. You watch this and then fucking watch one of those things, and you will never complain about shaky cam in a found footage film ever again, honestly.
This is like the pits, this film, isn't it?
Yeah, so...
you can't win them all. We're watching all 72 video nasties. We're going to do it properly, and we're completists, so we had to watch it.
Yes, we had to suffer, and this film is 71 minutes long, and it's the longest 71 minutes of my life.
Yeah, time that we're never going to get back, so won't be revisiting this one.
No, not really, no. So we got our first two deaths, and then we cut to our sort of main character, I guess, and her husband. And one of the issues I have with this film, as I'm sure you do as well, is characters talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and they talk about nothing, but they just talk for ages.
At one point, he called her a brazen hussy, and I was like, oh, is this going to get exciting? And then nothing really happened, so it was nothing.
No. And bear in mind, this film, as I said, it's not a long film, but there's so much talking in it. And the talking is so quick that, like, literally, I took nothing in that these characters were talking about. I saw this film yesterday in preparation for this show, and I can barely remember anything that they talked about on the whole show. Sorry, what the fuck am I talking about? I can barely remember anything they talked about in the whole film.
Yeah.
It's just total incoherent, total nonsense.
All filler, no killer.
Well... Exactly.
Just all filler. Like, it's like they're just stalling for time constantly. It's just really bad.
Well, so after that, we then have a scene, because apparently these characters need money. So the husband, whose name is Richard, his brother Walter apparently has a lot of money. So they go and talk to him for a few minutes, and they talk and they talk and they talk and they talk. And Walter, the brother, he appears to be in sort of, I don't know, the impression I got was him and his brother were in some kind of homoerotic relationship, because I could cut the sexual tension between them with a knife. But again, that goes nowhere. Literally, that goes nowhere. It's just in the film, and it's never referred to again. So we got 10 minutes where literally nothing of any relevance to the rest of the film happens. This film could have been an hour long.
I'm really enjoying your rant about this, because this film is so shit.
Oh, well, there you go. So if you allow me to continue, at the beginning, do you remember when the first murder is happening, and you will suddenly hear a voice in the background going, cutting away?
No.
That's the director. You can hear the director on the soundtrack of this film, like, actually directing. That's how amateurish this is.
Ladies and gentlemen, Greg Knox. Carry on, Greg. I'm enjoying it.
No, it's
fine.
fine.
More entertaining than the film. Come on.
Well, and there you go. So I've got to be honest. About halfway through the film, I gave up with pointing out all the absolutely terrible sort of directing, the bad cinematography, the way shots are framed. So there's a shot about 15 minutes into the film where you've got two characters talking to each other, and their heads are at the bottom of the frame, and in the centre of the frame is a candle. That's how he decided to frame that shot. They've got shots that go out of focus. You've got shots where the camera is too close to the person who is speaking. You've got just really awful camera work, as I mentioned earlier, sort of when all the killings are happening, because clearly they had a budget of about 75p. Like, to kind of get around that, you've got the camera going, swirling around everywhere, which happens quite a lot. You've got characters talking for ages and nothing happening, which I've actually said, like, a lot.
Oh, but wait, there was a dead rabbit in a bed. Like, that bit was alright.
Okay. You've got a character who's Colin, who is one of the only characters I actually remembered in the film, because they at least kind of made an effort to actually establish the character, who they are, and kind of their traits and things like that. So Colin is a bit simple-minded. He's a cretin, I believe is a term that they use in the description of this film, which is an amazing word that should be used more often. So he just randomly in the middle of the film kills and he just starts eating a rabbit, just picks it up off the floor and just starts eating it, a live rabbit. And I believe that was one of the reasons that the film got in trouble at the time, because this was actually prosecuted, if you believe that. This fucking film was fucking prosecuted. So someone sat in court and actually decided that this film should be branded as obscene.
Why did they even watch it in the first place? After 5 minutes, I would have turned it off if we were not reviewing it for the show.
I do not know, honestly. Like, beggars belief, it really does. So
yeah,
then
so
you've got lawyer Yep, and then you've got most amazing character in the film. So his character name is Lawyer Dobbs. That's the actual name. So they're the lawyer. So the plot of the film is basically your substandard, like you've got old person has died, their children all basically want the inheritance. There's a scene like where the will is read out and they have to stay in a house for like 3 days, and whoever's left over at the end, they will get a share of the money. And basically it's people scheming who basically want the money, essentially. That's the plot. And do you remember Lawyer Dobbs, this old man? What was he wearing? What the fuck was he wearing during the scene? He was wearing like sort of a weird hood for the whole film, and he was so pale as well. He was so white. He looked like the fucking Emperor from Star Wars. It just looked ridiculous.
The whole thing just made no sense. Like it didn't fit. So he didn't fit.
My head's
either.
going to explode, honestly.
Keep it up. I'm enjoying it. This is good. It's good for the listeners.
Wow, if you want to hear me rant about shit film.
Remember when I went on that rant about what was it, Cannibal?
Man from Deep River.
Yeah.
Yes, you went on a rant, and I was just wow. Okay, I just left you to it.
It's your turn now, so take it away.
At one point, a character in the film says, "I am lost." You're not the only one, mate.
Oh my god, this is too funny. Yeah, but then there's isn't there like a woman's head on a dinner platter? Surely that part's interesting.
Well, okay, so I mean, I've kind of spoken for long enough here. We established your body count goal here. So yes, so you've got the two characters at the beginning, they die, and then when they get to the island, the deaths sort of pick up again.
The man is so I've got Forest, man, eyeball stab, 2, death 2, woman, hand cut off. Death 3, man poisoned, collapses somehow. Not sure. It's a bit dark, a bit bumbly. Number 4, there's a man gutted with a knife, which should have been interesting but wasn't. Number 5, woman's head on dinner platter. Should have been interesting, but not gonna lie, I zoned out by this point. Not sure I even saw that part. I think it was too dark and bumbly.
Yeah.
6.
Just things just sort of just seem to happen. So people either talk for ages or people just randomly die without any rhyme or reason.
Yeah, and it's just kind of all merges into one, and there's far too much dialogue going on. Number 6, the husband with a pitchfork. It's one of those weapons that they like to throw in there, as we discussed in the last film.
Wasn't as good as the pitchfork death in The Slayer, not at all.
Number 7, servant woman. Colin is set on fire. There's like a servant woman. We're not sure who she is. She has a shit mask on. She gets stabbed in the head. She falls down the stairs. Colin is the one stabbing her in the head, and then she's the one falling down the stairs, and he's on fire. And then we weren't sure if he died or not because it's a bit fucking dark and shoddy. And then Colin collapses, so we presume he died, but I'm not sure because I was probably asleep by this point.
Yeah. The plot of this film doesn't matter. Like, I don't want anyone to watch this film. Like, unless you're like me and you're a sadist and you have to watch all these films, you have to take the good with the bad. Well, the bad with the good, I suppose, unfortunately. And this is one of the examples of that. Unfortunately, they can't all be winners. Yeah, basically, the twist is it's one of the servants. It turns out they're actually an older sister that the father had a previous wife that died in childbirth, as they normally do, and she was outcasted, and she was raised as a servant and had to pretend that like Colin was her brother or something like that. I don't know, it doesn't fucking matter. At the end of the day, it was her. She did it. She wants the inheritance. She dies at the end.
She screws everybody over. Who gives a fuck? This film is shit. Don't watch it. It's a good job we can't get fired for swearing because it's our own show, so there we go.
Exactly.
This film will make you swear, that's what I'm going to say, because you'll be so pissed off that you wasted your time watching it, you'll want to F and blind your way through a ranty review like we have just done.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, if you want to watch a film that's like, when people give bad reviews to films these days, I mean, like, say, for example, you watch a comedy can be bad because it's not funny. but the film will at least be competently made. This is not even competently made. It's shot badly. It's edited really badly. The editing is so shit. Like, scenes just start and stop just completely out of nowhere, like, just without any kind of coherent thought structure whatsoever.
And you would think that they would redeem it with editing, and like, you think that that's the part that they can't fuck up because they've got more time to edit, you know. It's just like, why?
And one of the worst things is, again, we talked about the last film having a shit ending. This has a really shit ending. A sort of another turd on top of a really massive shit sandwich. Basically.
Go on.
So basically what happens is, so like the killer and Colin, they both, they just die like that. And then, oh my God, Lawyer Dobbs is going to turn up. And then the film just ends. So we don't even know what happens after that. There are two sisters left alive. Like,
it's even worse than It Was All a Dream, you know. Oh, God.
It just sort of ends. It doesn't even end abruptly like Evil Speak did. Evil Speak at least had an ending, and it was just a bit abrupt, and that ending was fucking cool, as we discussed in the last show. Like, this was just not even, like, it just didn't even end. It's not even a proper ending.
It's not even a proper film. I'm going to venture that. I could have made a better film, like, on my iPhone, I think.
Probably, like, literally anyone right now could probably make a better film than this, as you said, on their iPhone, or literally just buy a camcorder. If you had a camcorder in the 1980s, like one of those 80s camcorders where you had really big tapes in them, you could make a better film than this. It would probably be framed better. At least people know how films are supposed to look. And I don't know if these were conscious decisions the director made as to, like, well, you know what, I'm just going to shoot it this way, just cause. Or whether they had to do it because of budgetary constraints. I frankly don't know. And frankly, I don't fucking care, to be honest.
What a royal waste of time.
Sucks. It sucks. The biggest, veiniest dick imaginable.
Oh my God.
However, it's not the worst film on the Video Nasties list from what I've been told. There is actually a film that we're going to watch at some point that is apparently worse than this. Cannibal Terror is better than this film. That is saying something.
I can't breathe.
So anyway, this is not a Video Nasty, not at all.
No.
It's not a Video Nasty, everybody. It shouldn't have been on the list. In fact, it being on the list is probably the only reason that I watched it, and it's probably the only reason why a lot of people watched it, which is really, really a shame. Because honestly, again, similar to other films that we've talked about, if it wasn't on this list, it would have just disappeared into obscurity and it would never have been spoken about again. But hey, whatever, you know, you win some, you lose some, as you said. And I think I've killed Rhea.
I'm alright, I got a drink of water and back, okay.
Okay, so so we both agree this is not a Video Nasty, and you will be absolutely shocked to hear this is not available on DVD in the UK.
Oh, how appalling, so what a shame.
You'll have to seek alternative methods of watching this.
Oh, God, okay.
So, anyway, so that's the end of the show, everybody. So that was certainly one for the ages. I'll say that.
In conclusion, watch Island of Death. Don't watch the Slayer or the Ghastly ones, please.
Yeah, no, Island of Death, really cool film. Slayer, really boring. Ghastly ones, absolutely atrocious. Don't watch it. So that is the end of the show, and I want to thank everyone for listening to me rant for the last 15 minutes. I hope you were as entertained as Rhea was. If you like the show, please subscribe on iTunes or on YouTube. So our YouTube page is the Lament Configuration Podcast. That is also the name of our Facebook page. So if you subscribe on there, you'll get every update when we do a new show and any cool stuff that we want to put up. You can also find that on Twitter at Lament Horror. That's at Lament Horror.
And I have been Reoffend Alternative Model, also available on my public page on Facebook, Reoffend. That's FEND, and I am on Instagram and Twitter as Ria_Fend. Look me up. I hope you've enjoyed the show, and I'm looking forward to covering 3 more Video Nasties next time.
Yes, so our next show is going to be a Toby Hooper special, because Toby Hooper has 2 films on the Video Nasties list, and he's a great director, so I'm looking forward to talking about that. To end the show on a positive note, after so much sort of bile being spewed by myself, because we love it so much, it's such a catchy song. We talked about it earlier in the show. This is from the Island of Death soundtrack. This is Destination Understanding. I hope you love it as much as we do.